But there's been a major blunder because they've got 7 gods here and the Ennead has 9.
I fired 2 of them for being late.
Welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. The show Moon Knight is tied very closely to Egyptian mythology. The hero works for a god, the villain is a god, and all these gods are there too. It's a lot to process if you're not an Egyptologist. So if you're not up on the Egyptian lore, we're here to explain what in the heck the Ennead are and how they connect to the deep, rich history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the first episode, we were introduced to the group known as the Ennead.
You know, like the supergroup of Egyptian gods. You know, you got Horus, Osiris, Tefnut, Shu.
Stop.
Now, in episode 3, we finally see the Ennead together and learn that they use their avatars to keep tabs on Earth.
We did not wish to meddle in the affairs of man.
Now that one line opens up so many questions. Why don't they meddle anymore? Why did they need to meddle to begin with? Who exactly are they? Where are they? And why did they abandon humanity?
Why is Gamora?
Well, we're going to break it all down. First, let's go over what these beings are. In one of our earlier videos, we put out a theory that said these Egyptian gods are just aliens from a different planet. They share similarities with other aliens that we've previously seen in the MCU. They have magic like the Norse gods, they control host bodies like Venom, etc., etc., etc.
No! Take your tiny hands off of me!
In the comics, the Egyptian gods come from a dimension next to Earth called the Celestial Heliopolis. Their home city is built on a small planet, a lot like Asgard. Now, in some origin stories, these gods actually originated on Earth, but then they traveled to Celestial Heliopolis when the pharaohs started to rule Egypt, which we've also theorized about in a past video. See, in the comics, a couple different supervillains have their roots in ancient Egypt. One is Apocalypse, like we saw in that movie. Apocalypse was the first mutant, and he's thousands of years old. So it could be that the rise of this new pharaoh, this mutant, caused the people of Earth to turn away from the gods and worship him. And the other Egyptian villain from Marvel Comics is Kang the Conqueror. Now, I'm sure you know this, but Kang is the evil variant of He Who Remains.
If you think I'm evil, well, just wait till you meet my variants.
In the comics, he was a time traveler from the distant future who traveled into the past to conquer Egypt because he was bored, and then he made his super high-tech headquarters inside the Sphinx. Now, in the MCU, if Kang conquered ancient Egypt, then this could have also caused people to turn away from the Egyptian gods. Now, back to the Celestial Heliopolis. It's also known as the Overvoid. I'm just going to say Overvoid because it's easier to pronounce. Now, this seems to be the place where the gods in Moon Knight currently are, as Khonshu says.
Return from the opulence of the Overvoid!
Okay, but when exactly were these gods on Earth? Well, in the book Stephen was reading, we learned that the Egyptians originally revered one god whose likeness was never represented. So there were never any statues or drawings to portray this god's likeness.
There's only one god, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
Now, over time, the Egyptians split this one deity into multiple deities, each with their own unique individual roles. Eventually, humans favored some gods more than others. Now, this is also similar to the Eternals, who came to Earth in 5000 BC to help civilization prosper, with each member of the team being deified in different places around the globe. Now, there are literally hundreds of Egyptian gods, but the Ennead is the main council of gods with 9 members, and there are different schools of thought on which gods are actually in the Ennead. It's like if you prefer the Van Halen of Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth. Stephen shows us a poster of this Ennead consisting of Osiris, Isis, Horus, Hathor, Tefnut, Geb, and Shu. But Stephen points out
They've got 7 gods here and the Ennead has 9.
Now, when the Ennead converges for the trial of Khonshu, we see that every avatar represents the role of their host god. The highest ranking members are Osiris, Lord of the Dead, and his wife Isis is the mother goddess, and their son Horus is the god of kingship and the sky. In the comics and in Egyptian mythology itself, Osiris is the god of the dead and the afterlife. His most famous myth is when he was sliced into pieces by his jealous brother Seth, often the villain in Marvel Comics. Now, his wife Isis revive him to have their son Horus, making him technically the first mummy. Now, eventually, Horus fights Seth and aids his mother in fully reviving Osiris, giving Osiris the role of the Lord of the Dead and the afterlife. Now, at the end of the 3rd episode, it's Osiris who explains Khonshu's imprisonment to Harrow, and this imprisonment could be thought of as death for one of these gods. Now, Osiris is the son of the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut. At one point, he succeeds his father Geb and becomes leader of the Ennead. His roles share similarities similarities with the All-Father Odin. Both of their families are rulers of their pantheon. Isis is considered the All-Mother, the same as Frigga. Horus is most similar to Thor, with his sky powers and his duty to become king one day. Now, because of their high leadership status, it makes sense that Osiris, Isis, and Horus's avatars are wealthy-looking business people. Next is Hathor, the goddess of music and love. In Egyptian mythology, she's sometimes regarded as the wife of Horus or the sun god Ra. She's a mother goddess with the powers of love, music, and beauty. She's also known as the mistress of the sky. This is important. In the comics, Hathor is combined with another goddess, Sekhmet. And Sekhmet is a kind of alter ego or evil sister of Bast, and we saw her on a poster here. So this avatar could have some bad blood with Wakanda and the Black Panthers. So when the Egyptians went against Ra, he sent Hathor down to punish them. But her growing fury and bloodlust turned her into Sekhmet, the feline warrior. Now, in Moon Knight, Hathor seems to have had a previous relationship with Khonshu.
She says it was not so long ago Khonshu enjoyed Hathor's melodies.
Both of their symbols intertwine well as the moon resides in the sky and is often associated with femininity. I mean, their past love could be the origin for that very idea. She is a combination of strength, love, reason, and her avatar, Yatzil, reflects this.
Khonshu's theatrics are unparalleled. You must be his avatar.
All right. And who are you?
I'm Yatzil, avatar of Hathor.
Here is Tefnut, the goddess of the rain. Now in the comics, she's the daughter of Ra, the sun god, and married her brother Shu, god of the wind. Now this might remind you of a prominent rain goddess from Africa, Storm.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning?
But Storm is a mutant. Yeah, I know Storm is a mutant, but she was worshipped as a weather goddess by African tribes. Plus, she's Kenyan royalty who grew up in Cairo. But more importantly, in the comics, she's actually married to T'Challa and become Queen of Wakanda. So it could be that in the MCU, the mutant gene is tied to the energy of these ancient gods. Maybe Apocalypse, the first mutant, was imbued with these ancient energies from the Overvoid and passed them down to all of mutant kind afterwards. Notice that Tefnut is wearing what looks like Wakandan clothing. Now in the past, we've posted videos theorizing that Bast, the panther god of Wakanda, was also part of this original Ennead. After all, Bast was in real life an Egyptian god, who in the MCU might be tied to the purple extraterrestrial energy of the vibranium meteor. And as we see in this show, Amit's energy is purple as well. So Bast might have been part of the Ennead. Very cool. But these links to Wakandan and Norse gods might have all been foreshadowed all the way back in episode 1. Now we did miss this detail in our Moon Knight episode 1 Easter egg video. We're sorry about that, but we're glad we have a chance to revisit it. When Stephen is researching the Ennead, we can see textbooks on Asgard and Wakanda on his desk. But there's an even more direct connection to Bast. Look at this book Stephen is reading. When describing the Egyptian island Philae as the choice home for these gods, they describe the island as having verdure and purple blossoms. Purple blossoms are carriers of the heart-shaped herb that Bast provided to the Wakandans.
Panther goddess Bast, who led him to the heart-shaped herb.
Again, tying the purple vibranium energy, lending to the theory that all these gods came from space together. Now we also theorize that Bast also has an avatar, the Black Panther, but maybe thousands of years ago, Bast used a more traditional avatar like the one we see here, where they could take over a human's body. But over time, this role became more symbolic as the Black Panther protected Wakanda without Bast needing to inhabit the body. Or maybe the energy of the heart-shaped herb contains the essence of Bast, which courses through their veins. Now, as the meeting begins, we can see that out of 9 seats, 4 are empty. Now, some of the missing members could be the earth god Geb or the wind god Shu, gods that we saw on the earlier poster. But if we fill those 2 seats, there are still 2 vacancies. Who are the 2 gods that didn't come to the trial and didn't even get acknowledged in the poster? So one option for the god's absence could tie into the upcoming Thor Love and Thunder. That movie is going to show Thor facing off against the villain Gorr the God Butcher. Now in the comics, Gorr lives up to his name. He's an alien who hates all gods for not answering his prayers when his wife and child were dying. So now he travels across the cosmos with a necro sword, killing every god he can. Maybe Gorr traveled to the Overvoid, where the Egyptian gods live, and he decimated the Ennead. In fact, this might be the reason why the gods retreated from Earth, but I have another theory on that I'll get into in a minute. There is another possibility for the missing members of the Ennead. Maybe we've already met them. What if the missing members are Khonshu and Ammit? Khonshu was banished years ago and Ammit was imprisoned.
But she was betrayed
Was she?
by indolent,
fellow gods.
Their absence on the poster and standing in the trial would signify that they were erased by the Ennead, and erasing people from monuments was a big thing in ancient Egypt.
Let the name of Moses be stricken from every book and tablet, stricken from every monument of Egypt.
Now, gods casting out other gods from the realm. Where have I seen that before?
No, Loki. He banished me, caged me, locked me away like an animal.
Oh yeah, Odin banished like all of his kids at one point or another. This also happens in mythology like all the time. In Greek mythology, Zeus, the king of the gods, exiled his son Apollo, the god of music, from Olympus for 9 years to be purified after he killed Python, a giant monstrous snake. Zeus also banished his brother Poseidon, god of the sea, along with Apollo for trying to overthrow him as king of the gods. Now in the MCU, all of these myths might have actually happened just with powerful aliens that the human beings took to be gods. So what about these Egyptian gods? Why were they erased and given the full Hela treatment? How did the gods' relationships get so messed up? Well, as usual, it was the humans' fault. Sorry guys. When Stephen is reading his book, we see a chapter titled The Rift Between God and Man. The book describes this event as different parts of ancient Egypt worshiping some gods more than others. Then other gods even started their own cults all around Africa, which again, could be the origin of Bast and the Black Panthers. So let's talk about this Great Rift, because I think it's going to end up being the most significant event from Moon Knight's history. An event so traumatizing that it shattered the power of the Egyptian gods, imprisoned Ammit, and led to humanity building the world that we live in today. Now this split isn't just about humans favoring specific gods or the gods being divided from one another. It's about the split between gods and humanity itself.
I think you should go. What?
Our theory is that the true Great Rift is when the gods realized that humanity was not worth helping and decided to take a step back. Now it could be that the Egyptians only meddled in Earth for the same reasons as the Eternals. They were here to help human civilization evolve. The Eternals were busy in Babylon, Greece, India, but they left some areas alone, like Scandinavia, where Odin and the Norse gods were protecting humanity from extraterrestrial invaders. So maybe when the ancient gods reached a point where they felt humanity didn't need them anymore, they had pharaohs take over their roles and decided to stop meddling in human affairs.
You may all go. The Deviants are gone.
But based on how Horus said,
"We have not abandoned humanity. They abandoned us."
I'm willing to bet that the Great Rift is actually when the gods realized that humans have horrible moral tendencies, like Phastos says in the Eternals.
They're not worth saving.
The majority of the Ennead decided that the best course of action was to stay out of human affairs and just observe them, except for two gods who love to judge humans and dispense justice: Ammit and Khonshu. The other gods imprisoned Ammit, and her avatar betrayed her because of her greediness.
She grew weary of having to wait for sinners to commit their crime before punishing them.
She wanted to judge innocent people. She went too far. The council put her in an Ushapti, a small figurine representing servants who do labor for the deceased. Now normally she would be tethered to the room in the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Now, he's tethered to this place.
But her loyal followers like Senfu stole her statue and placed her in a secret tomb and recorded the tomb's location in case the gods decided to show her mercy. Now Khonshu chose a different approach. He insists that
I was banished for not abandoning humanity unlike the rest of you.
He chose to continue his purpose of justice to benefit humanity, no matter how violent that might be. This was his version of love, and maybe Hathor noticed that too. They would have imprisoned Khonshu back then, but Hathor decided to help Khonshu out.
She says it was not so long ago Khonshu enjoyed Hathor's melodies.
So with her power of love and reason, Khonshu's sentence lessened to banishment on Earth. While helping Layla and Stephen locate the coordinates of the tomb of Ammit, he says,
I remember that night.
And notice that when he talks, he sounds kind of sad and wistful. Maybe he not only remembers the night of the banishment, but his fondness for Hathor and her kindness. I think that we're going to see flashbacks of this Great Rift, and it's going to be not only the moment when Ammit was imprisoned, but when Khonshu was banished. This was a seminal event in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, Harrow is trying to release Ammit from her imprisonment to continue her path of judgment on the world. He currently has the favor of the Ennead after lying to them at the trial.
I was in the desert, but at visiting the sands where crime, the line of sinners would be Longer than the Nile.
Now Osiris just thinks that another troublesome god has been imprisoned and everything's fine, when really, he's just wrapped around Harrow's finger. Mark/Steven has to help Khonshu get out of imprisonment by revealing Harrow's plan, and getting the council to get off their godly asses and finally meddle to protect humanity like they should have been doing already.
We have to stop the emergence.
But what do you think? Do you have any questions about the Ennead? Let us know in the comments below, or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.